You're listening to the Grieving Mamas Club podcast, a space for moms who are on the wild ride of motherhood while navigating their grief journey.
We're Kara and Rashida. Between the two of us, we're motherless moms of 4 toddlers and an angel baby. Together, we're going to feel our feels, but also remind you that there's joy on the journey too. Let's dig in. Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 5 of the Grieving Mamas Club. I'm really excited for this episode for a couple of reasons. Mainly because it's the first guest that Kara and I have had in a while. Like, I think the last guest we had was, I don't even know, probably of like September of last year.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's been a minute. So I'm really excited to then heat our guest chair up with a personal friend of mine who actually gave me the idea for this topic for this episode. I mean, over a year ago, I think. And then Kara coming into her motherhood as a second-time mom with Brooksy Boy and his diagnosis. Our guest today is going to talk about that, what it's like to be a mom who is, I don't want to say grieving a normal childhood. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see my air quotes. I don't want to say grieving a normal childhood, but I do think there is a special grief journey for mamas who are having to navigate a motherhood that is different than they expected it to be, right?
Yeah.
Due to the diagnosis of one of their babies or like any kind of diagnosis, right? So I'm thrilled to I call Kara my twin flame, but I also call this guest my mom bae. And so I am super thrilled, yeah, because she be cocktailing out there with me, y'all. Yeah, so I'm super thrilled to welcome to the podcast chair, Miss Caitlin Ladd.
Yay! Okay, so that intro, I don't know how I'm going to live up to that. That was great, and I am really excited to be here. And like we said, I think we've like danced around in different like circles, and then yeah, keep popping up in each other's lives. And so I think it's a kind of a divine intervention type of thing or something. But
yeah,
this is awesome, and I am excited to be here and kind of talk about a different journey or connection with motherhood and grief. I think that really, sometimes people forget about. So
yeah. So, Caitlin, if you will, talk us through your son's diagnosis, what it is, and how it came to be.
Yeah, definitely. So, just a little background about me. I'm a mom of 2, so we'll be talking specifically about the diagnosis of my oldest. His name is Harrison. He's now 8, and he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, or what people usually call, I will say old school, as juvenile diabetes. And honestly, before a whole diagnosis journey, I had always thought of juvenile diabetes as something that you saw like on one of the infomercials, 90s kids growing up and all those pieces. But it has now been formally renamed as type 1 diabetes, and it's really different than type 2. And I always like to make sure to mention that because often, and this will go kind of into some of the toxic positivity that goes along with chronic illness or
children. We just talked about this.
Yeah. And so with type 2, which is what most people have,
Adults, right?
Adults have it, yeah. And so, and there's a very small population of kids that sometimes have it, but it's usually induced by like weight and can be controlled typically by, diet and exercise. But essentially what's happening in the body is that the pancreas is no longer producing insulin. And so in contrast to that, type 1 is where basically, I always like to say it's like we're in an iPhone and the battery, the charger is giving out. You just don't know when that date might be, but those who are already predispositioned for type 1, they already know essentially that your pancreas is going to shut down on you and you're no longer going to produce insulin that you need. Yeah.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
I know. Both Kara and I's face just went, sorry, what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, record scratch, what?
I know. So it's interesting to me because with the reason why it was renamed type 1, and of course, I hope there's no one listening who's like a part of the American Diabetes Association or, endocrinologist wanting to correct me or anything. But
Listen, I
Somebody
have
might-
time. And there's so much, there's so much still. And Carrie, you probably have found this out too with your child. You get to specialists and there's still so much that's unknown about children diagnoses with some of these like chronic illnesses. And so, with juvenile diabetes, what it was coined before, they thought it only affected children. And now they're finding out that, type 1 diabetics can be diagnosed, at any point in their life. We've met type 1 diabetics who are 40, in their 60s. My husband, he is a type 1 diabetic as well. He was diagnosed at 17. And so that messed with his journey with diabetes for a long time because they were like, nope, you're too old for juvenile diabetes. No way you got type 1. Let's treat you like a type 2. And that had some damage for him too. So, so your pancreas, as I like to say, can sputter out at any time. And for Harrison's, it happened at 2.5. So, yeah.
Wait, okay. So hold on. I already have a question. So when he was born, it's, how like what they they go through all those blood tests when they're born.
Yeah.
I think actually now I'm going back.
Yeah.
But sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously, because you find out like their blood type is that. Yeah. So like even at that point, like you did not know if they had diabetes.
Yeah, we didn't know, and I will say that it was for the very like escalated like spidey senses of our pediatrician's office that for us to even come to diagnosis. It's unfortunate, but many kids go for months or maybe even a year with not knowing that they have type 1 because it will often present itself as like a, they have a virus or they're not feeling well or they're bedwetting or, it's just, potty training that they're just getting used to it. And so we were very fortunate that we had a pediatrician's office that one, listened to me, and that two were, specialists in their own right, where they had someone in their group that had worked with type 1 diabetics that were, or pediatrics in type 1 diabetes. And so we were really fortunate in that. But you're right. No, we did not know going into it. And my mom always was like, when he was born, hey, there might be a possibility. Have you checked into that? And even still to this day, they say there's no linkage with genetics, but
that's what I was gonna ask. Yeah.
And if you're, like you said, watching this on YouTube, I roll my eyes because it's anecdotal, but my own research and part of the moms groups, the number of siblings who are diagnosed, or a parent or a grandparent or aunt or uncle that has type 1, the link is pretty strong there. So it's just interesting that my husband was 17, but Harrison was 2.5. And that in itself, I think, though, has impacted him in a positive way as well, too. So, yeah.
You mean Harrison being diagnosed so early rather than, okay.
Yeah. It's his everyday.
Right. He doesn't know any different.
He doesn't know any different. His friends don't know any different. In some ways, he kind of feels a little special sometimes because he gets to get pulled out of school, out of class for a snack every now and then.
Yeah.
But for him, and I think as I've talked to moms who have kids who are diagnosed later in life, it can be really challenging when you're diagnosed as a teen or, preteen as well, too. So, while it was some scary years, I feel kind of fortunate now that we've kind of made that his normalcy in his everyday life. So, yeah.
Well, that definitely gives me hope for Brooks's future, like the doctors and just people we've talked to who also whose sons have hemophilia. They're like, I trust that Brooks will thrive. He will be fine. He will live. And Rashida, to answer your question earlier, to say, is it okay to say a normal childhood? I mean, even Brooks's doctors are saying he will live a normal childhood. So and that's something I think that I feel comfortable. That's the first thing that my husband and I were like, we just want him to be normal. And I feel like that's an okay thing to say.
And I think maybe healthy is normal. Yeah. What just a healthy, normal kid. That is what every parent wants, right? Yeah. That's what nobody wants to see their baby have to go through anything that they themselves also didn't go through. So it's both of your kids are going through. They're on a journey that is so different from anything the two of you have had to deal with. Yeah. So Caitlin, will you tell us how you even like came to this diagnosis? Like what was going on in Harry's life and your life?
Yeah, so he was always I always felt like, a sickly type kid. It was like we were always combating, virus after virus. He'd have strep, and then he'd get over that, and then he'd have, upper respiratory infection. And to the point where I was like, this just seems like he just is always so sick. Now we know, what was really going on. About, I would say, a month before he was officially diagnosed, he had just gotten over, like, again, another upper respiratory infection. And it was Christmas time, actually. And so my family was up at the time. And he, with classic symptoms, was drinking a lot of water. He was eating a lot. And so I kept thinking, and his pants were getting looser. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going through a growth spurt. I mean, even my own husband, who's type 1 diabetic, he didn't put 2 and 2 together either. And so my mom was like, oh my gosh, Harrison's gotten so tall. He's just slimming out. And we now know, of course, and he was also very irritable too, because, his blood sugars were going up and down, to which we didn't know. Now, fast forward to, I know, so it does. And it goes back, and you probably have this too, Kira, where I look back and you have that like regret of like, how did I not know? How did I just go about like my daily life and my child was like feeling like this? And I didn't even know anything. But you make the best, as I keep saying, with any grief journey, you make the best decisions with the information you have.
Yeah.
And so I had to let a lot of that guilt go, because I felt like as his mom, I missed all these signs. How did I not?
How were you supposed to know?
How are you? So, this is something that doesn't even like the bedwetting, like he's 2. So I'm like, oh, okay. He's starting to potty train. This is just going to happen. So, but fast forward to that, and I call it, they call it diaversary when you're diagnosed with your type 1 diabetes. But it was actually Valentine's Day.
Your birth
Diaversary. Yeah. And much like a birth story, every mother has their diagnosis story. And so it's like you gotta like temper it to see how traumatic people want to be. But it was a Valentine's Day party that kind of pushed him over the edge. Too much candy.
Yeah, lots of
And you'll see that there's a trend there with people being diagnosed around certain holidays. And his daycare teacher called me and said, Harrison is just not getting up from his nap. She's like, he's listless. He's not himself.
I'm like unwell. Like, obviously, Harrison is fine. Like,
yeah,
obviously fine. He is a thriving 8-year-old, but like you just saying that, like,
I know. She's like, he's hard to stir to get from nap. And she's like, and he's been like this last couple of days, but I don't, I know he's not been feeling well. So I don't want you to feel like, you have to come pick up. He doesn't have a fever. And I remember I was in a meeting at work, and I turned to my supervisor, who I credit because she's like super mom. She'd be embarrassed if I said that, but she's amazing. And I turned to her and I said, I have to go. I said, I don't know what's happening. Harrison's not feeling well. And I called our doctor's office and I said, I had him in here like last week. His daycare said he's not feeling well. And so I immediately went and got him, and how pale he was. I was like, something is off. They said, bring him right on in. And it was a nurse that came in, and she goes, nothing seems off. She's like, all these symptoms, which seemed disparate at the time, like, oh, the bedwetting's potty training, he's sick. Oh, he's feeling like this. She goes, I'm going to check his blood sugar. And I said, okay. And a normal range is anywhere, depending on that age, is probably anywhere between like 60, like I would say 75 to maybe like 110, 120. He was in the 400s. So they took us by ambulance immediately to Children's. And yeah.
Oh no, Caitlin.
Yeah. So like I said, I sent flowers and love and hugs to our daycare teacher. She pretty much just like I call her a saint, because
she saved him. Yeah.
She really did. And I think she kind of overshadows it with thinking like, oh no, I was just doing my job. And I'm like, no, Miss Megan, you don't even know. You say,
yeah, Miss Megan.
Yeah. Yes. She was amazing. And then the nurse that was there, who's been his nurse and our youngest nurse, like since he was born, she's been alongside us with the diagnosis too. And so, her senses to actually prick his finger and test his blood sugar that day was what saved him. So
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. So what happened? You guys were rushed to Children's. Could you be in the ambulance with him, or did you
Yeah.
follow?
Yeah, so we were there, and then as I was in the ambulance with him, and then my husband, he came and met me, and I remember that call, and I'm like, they said his blood sugar is 400, and I remember him just going like stone silent, and he knew exactly what was happening too. And I wasn't making the connectors, and of course the nurse doesn't want to say he has type 1 diabetes,
Right.
to make all these tests and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we get there and we do about a 3-day stint. Honestly, ours is probably the quickest stint because with my husband being type 1, we kind of already knew. But, it was one of those situations where, and Carrie, you may have had this too, where they're like, you guys can go home. And I'm like, no. So I slept like in the bed at Children's for 3 days, never changed my clothes. I was still like in work clothes.
Oh God, that's not comfortable.
Yeah, and I remember because I hate it to this day because I woke up that morning, I got my new driver's license picture, and I had it like pink because it was like Valentine's Day, how trivial that was, and I was like feeling cute.
Yeah.
I like remember going home and looking at that shirt and being like, I never want to see you ever again. Like it was like the trauma of like you remember the clothing you have on.
Yeah.
He had on. I was like, get rid of all of this. Like, I want to even look at this stuff anymore because it's like we've been through this situation. But
And every time you pull out your driver's license, you're like,
I know. And I just got renewed last week, and I was like,
good.
thank you. It's been 5 years. Diagnosis.
The opposite.
Exactly. I was like, the picture was cute, but I was like, you know what?
That's like one of the worst days of my life.
I know. But Children's is a unique place to be in because, especially when you're on like a general floor. And I always tell this story because it continues to like haunt me to this day. And like, I'll never forget. We got released, and we get on the elevator, and of course we're jovial, and we're like, oh my God, we're going home. We're smiling, and mom and dad look at us, and they go, oh my gosh, I'm so happy you get to go home, buddy. And I was like, yes, we're going home. And they're like, how long have you guys been there? And I was like, we've been here for 3 days. And she's like, oh, they had been there for like close to like 6 months, and they still trying to figure out a diagnosis. And so I said to myself, I was like, look, it was a situation where you're like, I don't know if I feel lucky or if I feel like it was just a weird place to be in, because I still think about that family, because I'm like, here I am, like we're like celebrating that we're going home, and you see another family who's getting ready to fight another journey of some unknown illness that they don't know anything about too. So it's a different place to be in, and I know everyone who says Children's one of the best pediatric hospitals in the country. But it is some heavy stuff that goes on in there too.
Yeah.
Those moms who are walking those hallways and sleeping on cots and sleeping in pediatric beds.
Mm-hmm. My husband said Children's is the best place you never want to be.
That's the best way to put it. Yep.
I was going to say, was Brooks at Children's, or was he at Cardinal Glen? And he's at Children's, yeah. And how long was Brooks there for? Wasn't it like a week?
I think 4 days.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was another short stint, and he was in the NICU. Caitlin, right after 24 hours after his birth, he was he had to go. He went for the circumcision, and my nurse was like,
Caitlin's a boy mom. She's like, I'm familiar.
Yeah. Familiar when I say circ, people are like, what? But so he went to go get circed, and my nurse was like, would you like how are you feeling? You want a pain pill? Order some lunch? I was like, yeah, pain pill. Like, we had a hot lunch. Brian was getting ready to take a snooze, as they do. And on the couch, and we were both just going to get ready to doze off. And my nurse kind of kept coming in, like saying, everything's fine. We're just going to keep back a little bit longer. It's just, it's not stopping. The blood's not stopping. It's not stopping bleeding, but nothing, that's all good. Like, she gave me no inclination that like something was wrong.
Yeah.
Then I don't even know how much time passed by, but a couple hours really. And a pediatrician who had the worst bedside manner busts through a door, and she's like, hemophilia, and I'm like, hemo what? Like,
and I'm not trying to laugh. That's like an anxious
no.
bedside manner is something I feel like they need to like work with. Like,
No, sometimes they're so cerebral that they, like I think it's a rare to have to have a healthcare provider who is both.
Yeah.
And it's a rare quality to have both. Like I'm a creative. I love doing in that creative stuff. But like when it comes to financial capabilities, I'm gonna take a back seat. That's not my specialty. So like I get it. Like that's the best way I can think of it. But she busts in hemophilia. I'm like, oh my gosh, what? Like I've kind of heard of this. I have no idea what it means, but they also don't want to straight up tell me that's what it is because they don't know for sure.
Right.
And I had to physically give up my baby to the EMS, children's EMS who came and they had a stretcher and it was like this like little box that looked, I know, it's terrible. I've actually already cried once about this today because I was telling somebody else about this. So that's why I could say it so blank faced. But like,
Yeah.
it looked like a little microwave, like a cozy microwave. And they just put him in there and there he went. Like, and I had to stay back at the hospital for 48 more hours. I just had a C-section. So
Makes you think about like, we had two rotating endocrinologists that came in, and I usually am a bubbly person, like very extroverted. And we had like, one of them was like, he was really truly like he was a children's doctor. Like he was just like, hey, buddy, like I'm gonna put the clown nose on. And I was like, I don't need you. I need grind again. I need
you there with the clown nose. Get out.
Yeah. I was like, I'll never forget that. I was like, looked at my husband. I was like, I can't deal with him right now. I'm like, I cannot, because like, I'm literally trying to research and understand like what's
You're stressed.
You're like stressed. Like, like I said, my own
not here for fun and games, sir.
my only exposure. And if you guys remember, I hope this like rings for somebody, but like I still remember like infomercial with like juvenile diabetes, like when we were little, and they're like, I'm a Make-A-Wish kid, and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm like,
oh god, Kate,
like I'm like, okay, so what are we really dealing with here? What's his life expectancy? What's these things? And I'll tell you, the best doctor for me was, and you find it in your diagnosis and care, you probably find this way too, like you find certain specialists that you like really vibe with, and and I want the guy or girl, whoever it is, I want them who are like to the point, that are, they don't sugarcoat it. They love exactly what's happening. They aren't trying to make it a bubbly, sweet situation. Because I want to just like be immersed into facts and what's going on. So yeah,
No, but I still think you can deliver the facts like in a caring way, right? Like you can still like my heart doctor like delivered my heart readings, which were great. Still talk that. I have a wet heart.
yeah, let's get MVP.
I know. Everybody wants my heart.
Yeah.
But he was like I found his personality to be a little awkward, but I also appreciated how like he slowed down and like said that they like made sure I understood what he was saying. So like at points I was like, does this Jude think I'm dumb? Like I know what a heart is. But I appreciated his like he was kind of awkward. Like I was like, is this how he talks like in social situations? Like you seem really awkward.
probably.
However,
probably.
yeah, I did appreciate him slowing down and explaining it to me to the point. Like he didn't sugarcoat anything. Like to the point. Yes.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think that med school kids or people in med school are geniuses, right? Like they're really fucking smart. And so I feel like when you're that fucking smart, social skills might not be the thing that you're like totally excelling.
I literally heard this about, it's like you're narrowly focused on like such a core specialty that some of the other stuff, and but if that is what it takes for me to know everything about my kid, I am totally fine with that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Completely agree.
I was just thinking about you. I can't, the trauma of like your baby being taken away, like that in
and
itself.
Without answers.
We were in the same position, Caitlin. We didn't know if he was going to make it. Like we didn't know because, it just wouldn't stop bleeding. And with hemophilia, feel you're missing your 8th clotting factor. So your blood goes through 12 stages of clotting. And when you first get cut or whatever, it starts at 12 and works its way down to 1, which makes like a scab and you stop bleeding. Brooks is missing factor 8. So he is on medicine. Thank God for this medicine that we give him. It's a shot in his leg every other week. We give it to him here at home, which, I mean, that in and of itself, I think that you cannot have I don't know, like your prophylaxis, medical terminology.
I know.
I'm just like, what the fuck is prophylaxis? What?
You get really like swift with like hair, like that you're like, I'm living in this like niche bubble of like, of learning about insulin and insurance and needle gauges and like all kind of So my life has changed forever.
It's yes, about 1000%. I have, I'm dropping words like subcutaneous injection or sub-Q, which is like,
I mean, you're basically a doctor now. I mean,
yeah. I for one learned a lot from the two of you today.
Oh, good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. So he, but anyway, going back to it, we didn't know if he was going to make it. And my husband followed it was COVID still. So, Brian had to follow the ambulance. He didn't ride with Brooks either. So I was at the hospital. Brian's following Brooks to Children's, and Brian, like Brooks just gets rushed into the hospital, and Brian just has to somehow find his way to our baby. Just, so
to your just born baby.
To my our just born
had a C-section that I know even more so like goes into like healing, but also mentally healing from what happened. That is
And also, so I had a C with our daughter too. So it was just by natural. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this again because anyway, my body wasn't made for birth, and so
it's still birth. It's still birth.
Oh, I meant yes, you're right. Sorry, my body was just gonna keep those babies inside.
I'm a
too.
Directing person too, and not in the same way, like where I tell people all the time, like really easily it can get, but like my body knowing labor just is not a thing. It doesn't happen.
Right. So, no. Yeah. It was stay in there forever, but that can't happen. So, shoot. So doubles. Oh, so it's a godsend, truly, that I had him by C-section, because if he would have come out vaginally, he would have for sure have had trauma to his head, and who knows, like a brain bleed or something, and he may have passed. Yeah. So that's also a good thing that I had to see, but yeah, so it was incredibly traumatic. And when I was finally released from the hospital, my husband just picked me up at like 6 a.m. I was on those nurses. I was like, I'm leaving. But it was definitely a special sort of hell being in the hospital by myself. I didn't want anybody else there. I had lots of friends and family who were happy to come up, and I was like, I just don't want to be around anyone. I just want to get better. I had a lot of phone calls to make, or just calling people, talking to doctors, whatever. Very depressed, but hearing those babies crying and being wheeled to the moms on either side of me, like I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Like,
I guess they could. I guess you're in postpartum, like you yourself are postpartum, so it's not like they would just like move you to another. Yeah.
Sucks. And even like his empty bassinet just laying in there. So anyway, enough about me. So what is like what is your daily life like now? Like what do you do?
Yeah, it's changed drastically since when he was first diagnosed. So first of all, I just have to like say, since it's a show that allows like profanity, like fuck the healthcare system. And I feel very privileged that, my husband and I have relatively great jobs with good insurance, but yet navigating like approvals and crap. It's
Less.
Harrison, when he first was released from the hospital, you are sent home basically with like syringes and a bottle of insulin, and a 2.5-year-old to get injections, which you are like, oh, how many does he get a day? It all depends. Like,
Depends.
depends on blood sugar. So we were at that point in time, before he became, like I said, the bionic man, we were pricking his finger pretty much close to every hour.
Poor baby.
Yeah.
And you guys are not living a life.
We're not living life. So at that point in time, I had graciously, in 2017 era, my work were like, okay, yeah, you can work from home. But eventually, like at a certain point, you have to go back to work. My mom came up with, which was a blessing. She's a teacher, and she took time off and came up. But we had to find daycare for him. And I will tell you, trying to find a daycare for a child with special needs is like trying to uncover some sort of like, you feel like Aladdin to like go through. Like I was like, felt like I was under like some underground like situation, like talking to people. Do you know anybody whose child has that? Like, do they send them someplace?
Yeah.
And it's also a situation where you're like, I can't just send my child anywhere. His former daycare, which we loved and we still sent our youngest there, they didn't have a nurse on staff, and he had injections at that time, and I didn't feel comfortable putting them in a situation. So luckily got into a daycare that was at a recommendation from a friend at work, friend of a friend at work, whose daughter had a seizure disorder, and we sent him there. But I'm going to tell you, like, the cost of daycare enough is already, but his child with special needs, there's a reason why we have an age gap. And I always like to tell people, they're like, why do you guys have 5 years in between the two of them?
Well, none of our damn business for one.
Secondly, I'm like, as you said, Kara, I was depressed and didn't know it. And 3, we were paying like almost close to like $3,000 a month for him to go to daycare. So because I had to keep my job somehow. And so,
Because you need the insurance.
no, I mean, that's way it's not
Sucks here.
Yeah. Emily, I'm like, tell me what I'm still talking here. And then, you immediately, so, going back to day-to-day life, eventually, after we showed that we could be successful with his, and I put this all in quotations because it's an insurance company, that we could be successful in regulating his blood sugar, then we were approved for what they call a Dexcom, which sits on his skin and reads it every 5 minutes into a phone. Oh, so that keeps us from pricking his finger, but we still had to do injections.
Wait, pause. Time out. TV time. What? You mean to tell me you had to prick your 2-year-old's finger every hour on the hour, continue giving him these random injections all the effing time, and then the insurance is like, yeah, you've proven yourself worthy.
Yep. That's the first pass of that. Yeah. And keep in mind, I was also during that time too, I'm a working mom. So I was literally, we're watching his blood sugar. And then at my lunch hour, this is so sad. I would take the 10 minutes to drive to his daycare. I would dose him then. I would get back in my car, and there was a Schnucks across the street. I would grab a bite to eat of that Schnucks, eat in my car for 20 minutes, and then drive back and be at work. So that way I could get him dosed, regulate him. And literally it was like him running out from the gym, me poking him in his stomach, reading his blood sugar, and being like, all right, love me, buddy, bye. And we somehow we made it work. But yeah, he then got approved, finally when he was 5.
Come on.
For an insulin pump. So between the Dexcom and the insulin pump, it has changed his world completely. And he goes to school in a school district where, and you'll probably find this out, Kara, when you start doing research, that some school districts, depending on property taxes, have, a wealth of, money where they can employ a nurse that's full-time in school. And some have a rotating nurse where children basically have to do their own care during the day.
Oh.
And so, we're really lucky.
Good question.
I know. Yeah. Kara's like, God damn it.
Yeah, it is. That was the number one thing when we were looking to move. We're like, okay, everybody's like, oh, what school district? I'm like, the one that has a full-time nurse. I need her. I need.
Yeah.
So you become friends with the school nurses really quickly, and the underground amount of students who are all, have chronic illness or special need that go to her too. So she keeps us updated with our Harrison School Group app, and Nurse Michelle and Nurse Holly. That was his preschool teacher, or preschool nurse was Nurse Holly, and Nurse Michelle is his elementary school one. And they are those women. I hug them, and they tell me he's like their extension of their children, because Harrison he is with them a lot. And yeah. So that is kind of where we're at right now. And if you're thinking about something else, make sure you guys start talking about like 504 plans and
Yes.
all that other stuff too.
What is a 504 plan?
So it's basically a specialized plan that like your child couldn't be discriminated against in the education system, and that they have to accommodate for certain processes that are approved. So similar to, you can write in some IEP type stuff into there, but yeah, you become legal real quick on like insurance and
You're like, I am a part-time lawyer and also a part-time doctor.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Endocrinologist by trade. And then you're like, and I'm like legal jargon of like, who was trying to discriminate against my child, because this won't happen.
Oh yeah. And it's unbelievable when all this first happened with Brooks. Like Brian, he's more of the financial guru of the two of us. I'm the creative director. He's the CFO. So he was like dug straight into figuring out all of the insurance side of it. So, and he still like deals with it. But trying, and we even have a specialty care for pharmacy, where it's supposed to be very oh my God, what's the word I'm trying to say? I can't think of the word, but where they are more accommodating and kind of like help guide you through everything that you need to know. It still is not the case. Maybe they're like a little bit more help. I mean, they're great. The people there that work there are very nice and they're very helpful, but it still is a lot of, you're just thrown into this world. They're like, okay, here's this number, call this number, and this is the pharmacy that you might want to use. I don't know. And yeah, just
it completely changes your whole life. I think back to that, and and much like as I was telling Rashida, it's like it's a different type of grief, because it's like your world is never the same again, and people expect you to just go back to normal, and it affects how you parent. It
affects who you trust with your kids.
Oh my God.
I had never, until you were talking about the nurse situation, that had never crossed my mind as like being a thing that you, Kara, are gonna have to navigate. Like that had never even, not even. And Parker now goes to a daycare that has a nurse on staff, and now I'm like, God, thank God. And like I thought it was cool, mainly because if Parker complains her ear hurts, like she can go to the nurse and the nurse can check it. And I don't have to take her to the doctor.
That is nice.
Like they can diagnose some shit right there. And yes, that's wonderful. But from a just like as a mom whose kids aren't diagnosed with anything, and we did have like a health scare with Dom early last year. But like those are things that I wouldn't ever have to consider. And one of my really good friends just transitioned to being a school nurse. She was like an emergency room nurse for a long time in downtown St. Louis.
Oh, nice.
She was a like a pediatric NICU nurse for a long time too. I think she worked in the burn unit, but she like got to a point where she was like, I can't be around sick kids anymore. Like I am a mom myself, but I can't be around like chronic, like that kind of sick kid.
Yeah.
So she moved to being a school nurse, and now I have like, after this conversation, I like want to go hug her, because I'm like, you probably don't realize, she probably doesn't realize the comfort she's bringing to so many parents.
Yes.
She doesn't. To be able to, I tell them this all the time, like it doesn't go without a thought that like, I am trusting this person, in this situation, this woman, and even his teachers, like they all surround him and they just love on him, but they also are such big advocates of him too. And like, I feel really blessed in that, because, you don't know how it will go. And every year it's a new, I don't want to say fight, but it's a different situation every year with
with a new teacher. Yeah.
Will they be accommodating? Will this even happen? And It is, but like you said, it changes everything because like I just feel very gracious, like with my husband, like George and I, like we have really great places to work. I've had horror stories of people who, because they've had to leave suddenly because an insulin pump goes out. I mean, that is dire. Like that could send him into sick crisis where their jobs won't let them leave. And I am
Oh,
where I know. I mean, some of the groups it's kind of sad, and I'm like, I feel very like just fortunate that I don't have that. Like if I'm like, Harrison knocked off another $600 Dexcom, we gotta go. I know, and it's like, and I have to control myself, and I know it's like rambling, but like you probably will find this too when Brooks gets older. Like it's a hard balance because it's like I know that with our youngest and with how I parented Harrison during that time are significantly different.
yep.
I was literally in survival mode because to control my anxiety was I need to make sure that you're healthy at all time. I still don't sleep because I check him all times a night. Probably for the worst thing, he's 8.5. I still will have him like come and lay in the bed with us so I can make sure his blood sugar and everything is like within range. And I don't think I got to get as huggy and feely and, just cuddly as I have been with our second, just because I was just trying to, in that mode, like trying to survive and keep him as healthy as possible. So it has been a different relationship for us. And they talk about that a lot with moms of chronic illness. If you like look at it or like read about it, that these kids, they get older and they're like, I wonder if my parents loved me because they never showed me love. And on the flip side of that, it's like the parents are like, of course I loved you. Like, like all the sacrifices that we made. And so I've had to really just like think about that and how I've shifted my view of motherhood and making up for that lost time during diagnosis as well too. So if I could give you any advice is love on that baby, find time that is not about his diagnosis, be able to find time where Brooks is just able to be a kid and you're like, I love you for who you are. Not, let's talk about your, why didn't you think about your, your insulin pump coming off during the day? Like, so
Right.
shifts that.
I feel that can definitely be hard. I feel like because it's like you are obviously you love them, like you're doing all of this for them, right? And so, but I can see how as a kid, like if you're only being yelled at, quotes unquote, if you're only being talked at about something you did wrong,
Or something that is wrong with you.
yeah, like I can totally see why that would be a thing. Like why it would be. That makes me sad.
And that's, I think, part of the grieving process too. Like when you find out about the diagnosis is you don't want that to define them. And that is something that we first initially said too. We will not let this define him. It kind of does, but I hate that I said that, but I also say it because, his team of doctors are like, whatever you do, you cannot tell him that he cannot do anything because he'll only want to go do it. Whatever. But there's like, but he probably should play hockey or football. And my husband's really struggled with that because he's always wanted a son, and then wanted a son who could play hockey. And so like getting this diagnosis in his mind was just like the absolute worst thing to happen. So this team of doctors are like, listen, we're not going to let this define him. Don't let it define him. If he wants to do something, well, we're going to educate you guys. We're going to educate him on the best way to do it. So we don't ever want to keep him from, if you guys are all going to go ice skating or whatever it is, we're going to teach you and coach you through the best way to make sure that he is still involved and still able to participate just like anybody else. So, yeah.
And that's how we decided to take this on, because you probably felt the same way. Immediately, I'm like, I want to know answers. I joined every mom or parent group of one, and I felt like there was two buckets. There was families who let it identify their whole entire lives.
Oh my God,
Caitlin. Or obsessively made, like, I will say I learned a lot from some of these groups where moms made it about themselves, and it's like, I'm the mom. It's like, I also have like I'm like, you don't have type 1 diabetes. Or we felt like we've had people who are like, I want you to blog about this more. Why don't you talk more about it? And I'm like, when he's ready to talk about it. I don't want his whole who Harrison is to be type 1 diabetes. So much more than that. And agreed with you. Like, we don't want to limit him and think about that. And so we'll let him share his story when he's ready.
Yeah.
And he doesn't let it be the thing that is his presenting factor about him, which is what I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the same way, Caitlin. I only share it, with my friends and obviously family, but like with friends and if it comes up for whatever reason, but and on the podcast, obviously, but it's not something that I've ever shared on social media or anything like that, just because I just feel like I don't know if I'm still in a little bit of denial stage too, but I also don't think you don't need to share everything on social
all the
media.
time.
Yeah, that's it. But like, I just don't need Susie Q from and 97 who I met, whenever. It's like,
and people trauma bond as you guys like with this. It's like, I want to tell you the worst story of what happened to my kid, and I'm like, I don't need that. I don't want to hear about.
Oh, I'm like,
I don't want to hear. So
Yeah.
There's a couple like moms of hemophilia mothers groups and like other Facebook groups, and it's like not really the best place for me. And so I just kind of I'll see it as it pops up, and sometimes it gives us some good ideas, but it's just not the best place for me because other people are giving their kids different medications. Some people don't choose to give their sons the same medication that we're giving Brooks. They just choose to do something else. And so that can be very emotional for people that,
Oh,
or whatever.
Then cue the mom judgment, the mom shaming for you.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
Gosh, I'm sure both of you have to deal with some form of that. Like, I can't believe you would give your kid like.
It is based off of misinformation or misinformation and not knowing, just lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
But
I was going to ask you, have you found have you found that, it maybe Brooks is a little too young too, but like, have you found any relationships that have changed for you? Or I asked that because I know that like after, especially the toxic positivity that we talked about earlier, like I really in that first year, I got probably my personality too. I got really rubbed the wrong way with how people like approached like or even dismissed how I was feeling or how my journey was. And it changed a lot of dynamics for me in my life. I mean, just with like me losing my dad, I was like, nope, I don't have time for this. So I wonder about that for other people too. Yeah.
100%. I found myself and my husband too, really trying to explain to people the severity of the situation. And I think that, I especially have a tendency of when I'm telling the stories, like, well, thank God we had this medicine because he'll be okay. And our doctors reassure us too that he will be okay. But the fact of the matter is it's extremely rare and it's not good. So trying to communicate that to certain people they are very dismissive. Like, well, he's going to be okay. So that's fine. I'm like, but it's not fine. Like, what don't you get?
That's why I'm like so happy, Caitlin, that you were able to come on and talk to us about this, because I feel like there could be the diagnosis is like, I feel like somebody could be like, well, your kids don't have cancer. Like, my kid has cancer. Like, that could be, you know how I feel about it, at least.
Yeah.
I feel like there could be that, but I feel like within your two stories, like what at least I'm getting is like, sure they're quote unquote going to be okay, but honestly, they're only going to be okay if you two stay on your P's and Q's.
Yeah.
Like, if you two stay on top of that, like, it's not that they're going to naturally just be okay. Like, so I feel like that's almost, I guess, like, shitting on you guys as moms to just be like, they're going to be okay, when you're like, but look at all this shit I have to do, Susan, to make it so. Like, he's only going to be okay if I don't sleep.
Yeah, and I'm pricking his finger in an hour. Pretty much. No, and it's like, just, it's just like simple things that, like, people are like, yeah, like he can sleep over. No, he can't. So the reason why he can't sleep over to begin with, that's another whole podcast. But
Yeah.
it's like, unless you're gonna, I know, I was like, unless you're gonna have somebody who is going to be providing care all night and watching his diabetes and his his blood sugar all night up, I don't think he can. And that's been hard to explain to him too. He doesn't do summer camps really, because I just, I used to be a summer camp counselor, and I was a high school student and an early college student. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me if I'm going to have a high school student who has no medical background watching my child during the day at why you know. And that's even with insurance. So it's like, it probably, and I know looking back on it, like some of the things probably are irrational, and I've had to like ground myself in them too. But I'm like, you know what? Let's sit in this. It's a valid response, and my feelings towards this are valid. And yeah, you'd be surprised with like your kids and the whole motherhood journey. Like people are like, you're gonna be fine. Don't be so dramatic. He's okay. He's here with. I had a 80. My cousin's cousin had this, and she's fine. Look at her, and I'm like, okay,
not helpful, Susan.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which God love my Susan. I was like, well, yeah, that's grandpa.
Yeah.
Oh, well, listen, why did I pick that as like, what's her issue with Susan? Like, what's that? No shade on my wonderful, amazing mother-in-law.
Oh,
also named
never.
She would
never.
No. And Caitlin, so one thing, as when you and I talked about this episode topic again, like a year ago, one thing you said, like, stuck with me, which made me like, which is why I was like, damn, this really is like a thing, like that she has to deal with on the daily. You said at this point,
that is nobody but, there you
go. No, you said that was Harrison in kindergarten. What grade is Harrison in right now? Third?
Second grade.
Second. Yeah. Okay, so okay, that like you have to pack his lunch based on when he can get dosed, or like he can't just like sneak a couple chips out of like his friend's lunch. Like he has to eat the lunch you pack, and it is packed specific to when he's getting dosed. And I was like, damn, that's like that's a lot of work. I hate packing lunches. I mean, that's a lot of like pre-thinking of like, and you probably weren't even anticipating that, like when he was going to kindergarten, you were probably just like, okay, yeah, he's going to kindergarten. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. What's he supposed to be doing? Maybe he's trading snacks. So now you have to have like a full-on conversation that's like, Harrison, you can't trade snacks.
Not even in kindergarten. Brooks is stealing other kids' food at their little table.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to eat what is given to you, homeboy. Like,
yeah, it is, because he had a Valentine's Day party. Curse the Valentine's Day party.
Oh damn.
And he had a bag of candy, and we're now getting into the preteen age, which is now like he's trying to be defiant about it too. So that's a whole journey that will go on. And he had the bag of candy, and I'm like, I know you've been eating it in your room, and I'm like, you can't do that, buddy. And I know the chocolate is good and it's all yummy. Everyone loves chocolate, for the most part. But it's like, a normal kid thing where it's like, you just want to snack here and there. And that keeps his blood sugar, it makes it harder for us to keep it in range, which has its health implications, because as we share with him, it's not just what we're doing right now. It's that I want him to be as healthy as possible. So you still have functioning kidneys, and you still are able to have a life beyond that, because those they're weakened by the lack of insulin producing. And so, it's a lot of futuristic things that we have to like just talk to him about. And the executive decision functioning in that, it's something that people don't even talk about, but it can be a lot during the day. That
Exhausting.
It is exhausting. And, when you sit and think about it, it can be really emotional because you're just like, man, it takes away some of the joy in the day because I feel like I'm like an operations person every single day. Like, I'm like, is the lunch packed? Are the carbs labeled? Have we checked in with the nurse? Does he have his insulin pump on? Is it charged? What day are we on for his continuous glucose monitor? And so,
Gosh.
and to the mental list of
Gymnastics.
it is. It really, really is. Yeah, it's a lot. So I thank you for recognizing that because a lot of people don't really think about that. And
Yeah, when you said that, I like it has stuck with me for a year, obviously. Just
yeah,
dang, like dang, that's so much work, and yeah, just dang.
Yeah. I hate packing lunches. It's the worst.
well, I know it's nice that like his school, like they have great options for like what they
Oh,
call.
good.
So he gets to go in and like his nurse is pretty good about like, but still, she goes and pops in on him and sits with him at the lunch table sometimes. So he doesn't even get to get that full experience of being with his friends and being rowdy. And it's like, oh, here comes the nurse, or he has to leave and go to the nurse. And so he misses out on that experience of
Yeah.
just kicking it with his
Oh.
friends and being a 8-year-old boy in the lunchroom, whatever that craziness probably is. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I had thought about you the other day because I was watching a TikTok of the Jonas Brothers. Nick Jonas is a type 1 diabetic.
He is.
Yeah,
Wow.
and somebody was asking him, they were asking the 3 Jonas Brothers, and apparently he was like diagnosed in some like crazy way too. I watched their, apparently I'm a super fan. But anyway, so somebody was interviewing the 3 brothers and they were like, so do you like sweet or savory things for breakfast? And like the first brother, Kevin, was like, oh, I like, savory. And his brothers are like, you don't like savory, like you always had like so much syrup on your pancakes, blah blah blah. And then they get to Nick and he's like, oh, I'm savory for sure. And the girl goes, it's not like men can have sweets for breakfast too. And he goes, no, I can't.
He's like, got that. It's
I'm
where
a type 1 diabetic.
yeah,
You're conditioned. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, no, I am a type 1 diabetic. I'm not eating sweets.
it's funny because I always use George as an example because he was diagnosed in college. And so that's a whole different layer of his like journey of like
Drinking, I'm sure, throws
Oh gosh, yeah.
drinking. Like I'm like, and I knew nothing at that time. So I like kicked myself being like, oh, we dated this long time. I didn't know anything. But one of our first dates, like, we like go back to his fraternity house. I hate that this is not going on here. But
okay.
he had a mini fridge that I now know had his insulin in there, but he had all these diet drinks. And I was like, this is so strange. I was like, you have diet, like Sprite Zero and Diet Coke just randomly. I'm like, that's cool because I like Diet Coke. But
Yeah.
you had this, and like, you can drink full flavored soda. And he's like, no, I can't. And I'm like, and his fraternity brother's like, you don't know he's a type 1 diabetic? And I was like, no, I didn't know that. So yeah, it's like, yes, yes. I know. I think back, I'm like, what I didn't know, like you were gone.
I know. And now you're like living that. Now you're really living it. Yeah.
And it also like makes me so mad. It's like, why?
Yeah.
I don't want to, and I don't want them to. I don't want, and also, I also don't want. We don't want our daughter to be to live this life because, she's 5, so she doesn't know. We haven't told her. There's no reason we will let her know, but like we've told her that he takes special medicine, but I think she was just like,
Yeah.
She's like, cool, I don't want it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. She's like, is it chocolate medicine? Because I hate it's amoxicillin, so it's like tertiary syrup. Oh my God, what do you do about that?
About what now?
So amoxicillin. So like they hate taking amoxicillin, and the only way I can get Ellie to take amoxicillin is by mixing it with a fuckload of Hershey's chocolate syrup. Like, how would you?
So he's pretty good about medication and stuff like that. And luckily, like Tylenol and stuff like that doesn't raise his blood sugar, so he just takes regular stuff.
Good.
My non-diabetic kid is the one who doesn't want to take medicine. I have to like corral him like I'm doing a search warrant or something. I'm like, dude, just take the medicine. Like, I shouldn't have to like harass you and have like read you Miranda rights. Like, just go ahead and like
Just like tackle into the floor and like you like I do a 2-person job.
yeah, and then I'm laughing like yeah, I do try to like just shoot it out here.
I'm like, we still use the syringe here, baby. I'm like, open up.
Push here. I'm like, you're 3. What are we doing? We're still a baby twin.
We're gonna syringe till we die over here. Die still using it. I'm like, whatever, open up.
I know.
What does I kind of have a good idea ish of what your daily life and what his daily life, what your all's daily life looks like. What is the future look like for Harrison?
Yeah.
I love that name.
Yeah, thank you. So it's it sounds silly, but like it's bright. but no, it
That's good. That's good.
it is good. It's good. But
Say it louder. It's bright.
yeah,
That's good.
right.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of things that like I think about though. You know, some of those major milestones for him look a little different. And so it's going to be interesting how we navigate this, like driving a car and having to get special license for, or at least have it on your driver's license or having some sort of wristband or something.
I was gonna ask that. Do both of them, will Brooks and Harry, have to wear like a medical alert something or another to like let people know?
Yeah.
Or like a bracelet? Yeah.
Brooks has one. It's just on his diaper bag, though. I don't know.
Well, he's a baby.
I guess like when he gets older, they make them, they can like put them on their shoe or like more discreet, because kids don't always want to, I don't know. So, but yeah, he is a baby. He doesn't wear really shoes because he's not walking yet.
No. Yeah, we haven't done the medical bracelet just yet, but eventually you may, because, they have all these stories about people, getting the low and they crashed their car and like guy like got Narcan because they thought he was like using drugs or something, and you're like, no, it's just type 1 diabetic. So because it does when people go really low, it mimics almost like being inebriated and things like that. I'm very lucky, as I mentioned, with George being diagnosed during college. Like, I think I would have more fears about college if I hadn't seen, him flourish. But I still think about it. So, will we still be reading his phone app to see his blood sugar?
Yeah.
I will be honest. I hope by then,
something's got to come along.
Some stem cell research. They already they've grown leaps and bounds just in the time that like Harrison's been diagnosed with just technology. Why? And so I hope, like I said, they'll be at that point, something to re-stimulate the pancreas at some point. But yeah, we just have those, and I just think about him like, high school and, and going to parties and
Doing high school things.
Or just be on his own. Yeah, when he
I know, and I'm just like,
he take care of himself. Like,
I'm like, we're gonna constantly be in your business because we're gonna try not to, but it's gonna be totally different, and I kind of grieve about that too because I'm like, he may not have that full experience of being able to just hang out and do the things that he wants to do to have those experiences too. So yeah.
I know. I totally can understand where you're coming from with that line of thinking because with Brooks, I have the same thoughts, but they don't know any different.
They don't. Yeah.
And but I also do wonder, like I guess for your husband, George, is he like, well, obviously he's like, yeah, I wish I didn't have to do this,
Yeah.
but I guess he's dealt with it for so long, but he's just kind of like, yeah, well, it is what it is. I want to not die.
Yeah. No, and that's how he is too. And that's how he it's almost like his way of thinking, and he's a finance guy too, so he's very logical. I don't want to die, so I'm going to take my medication.
Why is everybody that I am friends with married to a finance person? I too am married.
Opposite the tracks, you're like, what is that?
One of the gang. That's
I guess that it's probably opposites attract. Like I'm surrounded by like boisterous, like extroverted women, and so like
wild,
badass women, and so who lies behind a badass woman? Apparently, a man who works in finance.
Yeah, for him, it's like I don't know any other way. So like he he really frames that with Harrison too. Like, this is just your normal routine, and this is what we go through. We do it together. It's actually improved his health too, because he's like, yeah, I guess I will get on it. Like, I will have an insulin pump, and do that too. So yeah, it's changed, I think, for the better for them, and makes it just a normalcy for our family. And even Andy, yeah, you were like saying your daughter, like Andy's like, that's he calls him Bubba. He's like, that's Bubba's pump. He has a pump. I want it. I'm like, no, we don't. No, I can't deal with thinking you'll have
Put that in the universe.
I'm like, we're not even gonna manifest that. Well,
No. No.
yeah.
That back.
And you're like, homie, have you seen the insurance? You're not getting a pump.
I'm like,
Oh,
at this point in time, I'm like, no. I'm gonna keep working, because at this point, yeah, we need it, because
You don't have a choice.
the technology in itself, yeah, it's it can be quite spendy. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it can.
I guess if, there's moms out there who are new to, their diagnosis journey, again, like, I always like this telling Rashida, just really, similarly to how people are going through their grief journey, and, just being there for those, if you're a friend of someone, doing the research that you can, just to be near them and help them and understand, be a support to them too, and not dismiss their feelings, as regardless if they're not dealing with it or they are really dealing with it, it's all valid. And
Yeah, it's absolutely. And one of my good friends, her son, and we they were in our COVID bubble. Like, our kids went to daycare together. Her son is like one of those kids who's just allergic to absolutely effing everything. Like, absolutely everything. Like, he can
kids hear me more than my time when I
like absolutely. It was like egg. It's like egg, like general, like all of these things. And like one time, daycare gave the kids hummus, and he like went into anaphylactic shock. And it turns out he's also allergic to like sesame, and like chickpeas are from the sesame family. So she has to know all of this like literal biology about like what is from what.
Yeah.
And so like I know she is going through, like, she is constantly thinking of all of the things. And so like even they were just here on Sunday, and I pulled out cookies for the kids, and she's like, can I check that package? Like, it's like, yeah, like, and so I try my best to make things even just a little bit easier on her. So like, if I know we're going to hang out with them, like, my kids aren't eating peanut butter that day. Like, I don't trust myself enough to make sure I get like peanut butter from under their nails. Like, so I'm like, there's no peanut butter today. We're hanging out with Benny. Or like, I'm only buying, I try to only put out the snacks except for the cookies. Apparently the cookies are fine. They ended up being fine. Like, I try because as a mom who has, I guess, atypical children, and I don't have to worry about any of that stuff, like, the very least I can do is like fucking check my cookies. Like, like, that's the very least I can do for her, so that she doesn't have to, like, Finn can have a normal, like, he can eat stuff. He doesn't have to be like, and she doesn't have to, and she doesn't have to spend her whole time at like a gathering, like trying to like dodge, like, to make sure Finn doesn't eat something. Yeah. So I
thank you for that. That
try.
Those are little things, that like people don't think about, and it's like those make such a huge difference. Just for that mom, so that way she can have herself a good time too. So
yeah, she can have a couple there. She doesn't have to be super stressed. Like, so we try as a friend group to like accommodate. And again, that's not probably nearly as like life or death as like, he has to get shots, and he has to like he's one of those kids who will always have to carry an EpiPen around, which is scary in itself too, right? But yes, definitely not at the caliber you two are dealing with.
I don't know though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will always say that the EpiPen kids, moms, I even at least like, I have some level of like restraint, because I know like X and Y will have, like, this will happen with the insulin, but like with the food allergies, and I hate this because like usually like Harrison's classroom, he's paired with food allergy kids. Like, it's like teacher has like tripled down on her. So like there's a kid somewhere who has like citrus and like peanut butter and nut and all this other stuff. And the list goes on and on. So yeah, their class parties aren't really a lot of fun. Like, like we're all in the moms are and they're like, here is this like
Yeah.
here is
One Ritz cracker.
yeah like bark. It's like
Yeah.
which I found that like rice
Veggie straws.
and veggie straws, but not pretzels because there's gluten. But then Oreos, surprise.
Yeah.
Who knew that little bucket of Venn diagram that like every needs child can have. So like,
Yeah. They are. My friend have Oreos.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think no idea.
think about the teacher. I'm like, how bad? I'm like, she's got Harrison beeping because he has his phone going off all hours a day. She's got this child with this going on, and she's so pleasant. I'm like, I would be like an anxious mess.
Oh, I know.
Like thinking about it.
Yes.
She's an angel in disguise. I'm like, I don't know how you deal with it, but yeah, I will say the EpiPen kids. Like, I'm like, kudos to those moms.
Yeah.
I think about them.
Yes. A lot. Yeah.
And you know what I hope that people take from this episode too is this is a grief journey. And you get to call it grief, and you get to, and I think Kara, you were quick to be like, I'm grieving this, like because of
Another one.
yeah, because of what we do. Like you were quick to be able to like, this feeling that I'm feeling is grief. But I think that a lot of moms who they might not be able to recognize that. Like they might, like Caitlin, you said you were fucking sad for a minute, like
Long time.
I feel like I hope that a mom listening to this, like even if her kid does just have like allergies, like our friend did, I hope that she can give herself grace, like listen to you two, give herself grace and understand like, yeah, this is fucking hard. And I get to grieve about this. Like I get to grieve about this life. Like when I was picturing having children, it wasn't this.
That's exactly. Yep. That's exactly.
This is the card. I'm dealing with the cards that I have, but I get to have days where I'm like, no, but this fucking sucks. And nobody's gonna at least, I hate when people at least, nobody's gonna at least anything here.
No. Yeah. And then sometimes just even getting the chance to label it like, oh shit, this is grief. That is like a step forward. I guess like I'm always like a person like I want to try to get to feel better, but you have to feel your feels, and you have to, the only way to is through. So part of that is labeling what you're feeling, and if that will get you one step closer to the other side.
Yeah. And I will say that it helped me to identify those feelings. I know you mentioned earlier about like how that played in like with losing my dad too. And it helped me to recognize those feelings very early on, because then I look back and I go, ooh, man, I was mad.
Yeah.
Mad. I was sad. I was angered with people.
Scared,
I was scared. And you know, I went through all of those emotions that, you know, I realize now I'm like, oh man, yeah, I was on a grief journey during that time, and I just didn't have a way to really, like you said, label it and be able to share with others. Like, I will get there, but this is the place that I'm at right now. And allowing people to support me through it. So yeah, I hope this is helpful for someone.
No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was helpful for me.
I'm glad. I know. If nothing else, I liked you two talking.
I know. And I wish you all the best of luck with everything. And I know, like you said, every mom's story is different. And, you know, of course, our kids' needs are totally different. We're in two different sectors of life too. But it just is, it's something that you kind of connect on. And yeah, you definitely are there for any other mom that needs it.
No. Well, thank you so much, Caitlin. I can just jump through. I just want to come over to St. Charles and give you a great big hug. And
Across the river. We're Redmond over here. If you just right in St. Charles, that's another teaser for you. You're like, what's happening?
What is this episode even about?
I know. I'm
sponsored by.
I know.
Little husbands.
I know. I love your line about at least I can do is check the fucking cookies. I'm like, yes, you can. Yeah, you can do that. That'll help us out too. So,
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And
Yes, thank you so much for coming on, and on short notice too. I think I like literally was like, so you want to come next week? And you were like, yeah,
sure. I was on vacation. I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to talk about whatever. Yeah.
yeah. And we'll have to have you back on to talk about the loss of your dad, because that's a whole nother
I know.
great journey. Yes, but yes, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us and our listeners.
All right, gals, thanks so much for listening to the Grieving Mamas Club podcast. When times get tough, just remember, you're a badass bee and you got this, mama.